first edition of the show, Frontier Opening Bell this week. I'm Temple Ashaju. Welcome to the program. Bosana Mofaye, our executive editor here at Frontier Africa Reports, and of course, Ali Kansachu, founder of Rich Frontiers Management based in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you for coming through. Onyeka Ijoma, industrial goods analyst with Vetiver Capital Management. Thanks a great deal for joining us on the very first edition of the show this week. We'll look at the markets from where they finished off last week, where on a week-to-date basis, Nigeria was positive by 80 basis points. The BRVM stock exchange went lower by some 3.06% on Friday. That's how it closed for Friday's session. The Egyptian stock exchange was positive, 77 basis points. That's for Tuesday. And of course, Nairobi Stock Exchange went higher on a week-to-date basis by 3.12%. That's a good jump. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange was also positive on Friday by 65 basis points. Looking now at the Eastern African headlines, we'll begin with the markets again, and perhaps Ali will be able to give us the backstory to the data, the week-to-date data for that exchange, given what is playing out there now. Nairobi Stock Exchange, or Nairobi Securities Exchange, is to rename as NSE PLC Group to reincorporate exchange as a subsidiary, a 3-year limit now for the chairman. Telkom Kenya forms digital financial services subsidiaries. The Bank of Uganda denies dormant accounts in German bank. Still with Uganda, but now it's related to the debt. MPs approved some 2.4 trillion shillings loan for the country. Let's bring this to you, Ali, this Monday morning for traders to be able to trade well on.
So yes, thank you and good morning, Temple. Let me first start with your Nairobi Securities Exchange headline. I think they're basically doing a holding company here and looking to have the Securities Exchange as a subsidiary and give them more flexibility in terms of pursuing adjacent opportunities in the capital markets. So I think it's a very positive step. We've also seen some turnover at the Securities Exchange with the exiting of some long-standing board members. We're seeing actually quite a lot of turnover across our regulatory authorities, the Capital Markets Authority as well. And I think it's freshening these institutions up with new blood, long needed. I think the exchanges, in some cases, the Nairobi Securities Exchange in particular, has made great progress in reforming itself, but now it really needs to see more business, more activity, more listings. And I think what we're seeing is a much more coherent attempt to achieve that. So I think those are positive steps. Telkom Kenya, of course, the behemoth, the elephant in the room is Safaricom, and practically every other player has struggled to make any headway. We had Safaricom's results last week, very strong. First knockback in 10 years where the earnings per share had retreated about 6%. But really, in the context of a pandemic year, it was a pretty robust performance. But what it has meant is having such a fierce competitor has diminished its competition. Telkom probably has the best real estate from the historical side. And here they're trying to, I think, fine-tune their offerings. Digital is growing at a tremendous clip. And financial services. I mean, Safaricom was interesting. The results showed that M-Pesa revenues overtook voice for the first time. And that signals how important the fintech side is. You've seen that situation unfold in Ethiopia as well, where Ethio Telecom have got the financial services license. The new entrants won't have it, and I think that's why Orange is going for the stake in Ethio Telecom. So really, financial services is a very key component. Telkom Kenya trying to tackle that opportunity. Just a few more announcements out of Nairobi, which I think we should touch on. Equity Bank have increased their stake in Equity Bank Congo by about 700 basis points. This is buying a stake of the German wealth fund. So that's important. Really, in my opinion, Congo will turn out to be the jewel in the equity bank crown. And then big turnover at KCB, restructuring its executive team, second reorganization of its top leadership since 2011, let go of the director of credit, head of corporate and regulatory affairs, company secretary, and the managing director of KCB Foundation. So that was, I mean, quite important given that KCB is the biggest bank here in Kenya and in East Africa. And I think that's worth touching on. The final headline of yours, Uganda debt. Look, you know, I was looking through an African Development Bank report, which shows that in 2019, Africa had revenues, governments had revenues of $500-something billion. 44% of that was spent on debt service. So essentially, I think, you know, if you're not popping quaaludes, you understand that this is no longer sustainable. And you're going to see the scenario unfold in many countries. And the question is, you know, do the existing policymakers have the wherewithal now to tackle what is a problem that at one point was a light at the end of the tunnel, but now it's coming at us at a tremendous speed. Uganda is also one of those countries which is being severely challenged. That's why they went to the IMF a few weeks ago, caught a few people off guard. But essentially, this problem is not, it's symptomatic around the continent.
Thank you very much, Ali. Because of time, I'll just move on. Otherwise, I would have had a follow-up question to your last comment, but let's just move on. Bosin, I bet you will really be interested in the new public structure of the Nairobi Stock Exchange and, of course, the corporate governance status that they're coming for the chairman with.
Well, you know, I'm interested in that, but, you know, Onyeka is the one in the market. I'm a financial journalist. So I think it's good. I think it's a good thing, by the way. I think it's looking like what Nigerian NGX is doing. We'll get more clarity tomorrow when the Nigerian Stock Exchange or the NGX PLC did its formal unveiling, which is tomorrow, Tuesday. That's going to be a big day. This is going to be the first unveiling, and we expect President Buhari, the Minister of Finance, Aliko Dangote, Tony Elumelu, and other big names to speak at that particular virtual event tomorrow by NGS, which will be the first formal unveiling of its new structure, globally speaking. That is tomorrow, Tuesday.
African markets waking up. Your thoughts on this, Onyeka?
Yeah, just like Watson said, basically, it does seem like they're adopting pretty much the same strategy that the NGX, previously the NSE, adopted. And it is very positive in a number of ways, most especially because, you know, when you have investors, especially foreign investors coming into a market, they want to feel like there's some level of transparency in the activities of the market. They want to be able to have a say, and they want to be able to see things a lot more transparently. And it's definitely a positive move on their part, just like it was with the NGX.
Thank you very much, Onyeka Ijoma. I appreciate that comments there. Move on to the Western African markets and, of course, Nigerian headlines, where Nigeria is to release the April inflation data tomorrow, no longer today. We understand that they have just announced postponement of that release. Outlook is actually at 18.75%. President Buhari is to attend African Finance Summit in France this week. I understand he's in Paris already or thereabouts. AfDB setting up new Youth Entrepreneurship Development Bank, and we understand another press statement just came out of the AfDB now. They're partnering with the EBRD, given the infrastructure financing that's a particular entity has been carrying out lately. Unilever Nigeria transfers tea business to new company, that's New Tea Co. Sonatel is paying annual dividend of 1.225 CFA franc per share for the year 2020, and Cote d'Ivoire's third PM, Patrick Archie, in France for medical tests, something for market reaction today. I'll start with you, Onyeka, and then hear your thoughts, Bosin.
Okay, thank you very much, Temple. I'll dive into the inflation story, even though it's not coming out today again. Generally, we're expecting continued higher inflation in the Nigerian space. I mean, it has been rising continuously.
It looks like we're having an audio
issue now. Very negative, unstable X-ray. Yeah, hi, can you hear me now?
Okay, go on. It's better now.
Okay. Yeah, so like I said, inflation has been rising consistently over a couple of months now, and it's largely been due to shocks from the pandemic. We had the food blockade issue between the northern and southern Nigeria. We had consistent rises in fuel price driven by higher crude oil prices. All these we've had the FX devaluation issues, and all these have sort of contributed to higher inflation across Nigeria. Going into looking ahead to the April inflation expectation, we expect the activities of the Easter celebration and the Ramadan fasting to actually drive food inflation higher. Typically during the Ramadan period, we tend to see higher food inflation, even during the fasting period, largely because of the Islamic tradition of sharing food during this period, and that tends to support a lot of demand for food, and we expect that to drive food inflation higher to over 20%, taking our inflation expectation to be to somewhere around 18.9%. I know you guys have an expectation of 18.8%. Ours is around 18.9%, which is quite similar. Then moving on to the President Buhari in France story. I think yesterday Garbashi, who confirmed that President Buhari was actually in France for the meeting. He was going to be meeting with the French president to discuss certain financial issues, especially related to fundraising and the Reinvigorating Chad project, the Lake Chad project, also the desertification of northern Nigeria through the Sahel, and all these are quite positive, but I think the key question on many Nigerians' lips is this really the right time for the president to be going on these trips? At the moment, we are looking at the payoff for Nigeria, and in terms of fundraising, unless we are going to be getting direct funds from the French government, it's unlikely that anything is going to improve, because a lot will still be determined by our macro indicators, which are still quite weak. And in terms of private fundraising from the Western world, nothing is really going to change unless the ease of doing business, unless the like I said, macroeconomic indicators improve significantly in Nigeria. Meanwhile, there are like a lot of issues on ground that do need the president's attention. There are some positives though, because we know that the French. We know that the French Propaco from France has been looking to invest significantly in sub-Saharan African market, and if the president can wrangle some funding from the DFI of the French government, then it will be a positive trip. I am not very hopeful on that though. And then finally, talking on the Unilever transfer of their tea business, this is something that has been in the works for a while. It's not something that happened just in Nigeria, but on a global level. Unilever had decided to move their tea business to a separate company. They basically spun it off and they are operating it on its own. In respect to how it would affect Unilever Nigeria or Unilever West Africa, we do know that IT business accounts for between 10 to 15% of their top line here in Nigeria. So we will see some resizing. I won't call it a reduction in revenue because it's still within the Unilever group, but we will see some resizing of revenues, which is not a positive for Unilever right now, that they are currently going through their right sizing phase, following the revamping of their credit receivables policy. However, we do think that in the long term they will balance out.
Thank you very much, Onyeka. Bosun, quick comments before we move on to other parts of the show.
I think we have two big major headlines today. The first is the AfDB conference, which is starting about 10 o'clock Nigerian time, 9 a.m. GMT. This Youth Entrepreneurship Development Bank is a new bank that the AfDB is looking to set up to target innovative entrepreneurship, whatever that African youths are looking to do. We're looking at speakers today. And that particular, if AfDB can pull that off, I think it's going to be a major game changer for youth entrepreneurship. It will support some of the innovative works that Tony Lumelu and the rest of them are doing in terms of youth entrepreneurship in Africa. So having a development bank dedicated as an arm of the AfDB for youth entrepreneurship, maybe it will include women, that would be good if they can pull that off. That's one big story today. The second has to do with this France-Africa Summit. Nigeria needs to be there in person, in fact, not just in person, because Morocco has been skirting around trying to become part of the ECOWAS. Nigeria is in the line, it's a direct line. Nigeria is of France colonies. And Nigeria is surrounded entirely, with the exception of the Atlantic Ocean to the south, by French-speaking countries. So Nigeria is enveloped by French-speaking countries. So if you're having this conference, the Nigerian president has to be there. He needs to look everybody straight in the eyes. He needs to know what everybody's talking about. So it's not a tea party for him in Paris, or it's some sightseeing to go see the Eiffel Tower, whatever it is. This has to be a boot on the ground and negotiate the best for Nigeria and know who is coming where. The French guys are not speaking, using Morocco, using Ivory Coast and a few others. Talk about Congo DRC, which I Ali spoke about earlier. Congo DRC, don't ignore that country and think of everything. Those guys are making a pretty move, by the way. Cameroon is not sleeping either. So all around, Nigeria needs to be in that room 24/7, day and night, wherever they are having any meetings, to know what is going on and what Nigeria is getting in terms of what is not getting off the table. Thank you.
Added to that, Bosun, is that DRC Congo is actually recognized as one of the top 10 countries for the production of copper, and we know what is happening to copper now. Move on to the Southern African headlines, where SA mining production rises by 4.5% in March 2021. Sasol sells 30% stake in Mozambique gas pipeline for 5.1 billion rand. Eastern Platinum first quarter revenue jumps to $16.7 million in the first quarter. New Gold Issuer Limited records profit after tax of some 67.87 million rands for the period ended March. SA Banking complains 7,717 cases. That's positive by, or that's up rather by some 19% in 2020. And FNB has 2,197 complaints. Ali, let's bring these headlines to you. And if you'd like to say one or two things regarding the Africa Summit holding in France.
Yes, okay, let me start with that. I mean, President Macron is an interesting character. He started by telling us that he came from the generation of Nelson Mandela, and therefore it was going to be a fresh start for the French-Africa relationship. But, you know, for many of us, we feel that nothing has changed. We had, you know, we've got this sort of dynastic type governments across French Africa. You know, father to son, going back to Bongo, and recently, of course, with Idriss Déby and his son. But the French are a big player on our continent, and I think, you know, they need to make an impact. This is a big headline event. The issue will be how much capital they're willing to put forward and where they're going to deploy that. I think, you know, a lot of people will be looking very closely at how things unfold this week. France, of course, has made some very big investments. Total, you know, this is the story in Mozambique. It was meant to be the biggest gas prospect since Qatar. But let's see how things turn out. You know, it's a very bifurcated situation. The linguistics of Macron versus the evidence on the ground, there's quite an abyss between the two, in my opinion. Coming to South Africa, the rand so far this year has been the best performing emerging market currency, up 4% against the dollar through this morning. Quite noteworthy when you compare what's been going on with the Turkish lira, the Russian ruble, and so forth. But worryingly, we're seeing a sharp uptick in the test positivity rate in South Africa. The virologists I follow are all beginning to ring the alarm bell, and there's the concern that we're entering into the third wave. And then I think things change quite dramatically. We've seen a very strong inverse correlation between currencies and incidences of the virus, because then you get into this whole lockdown scenario. So keep an eye on that development. Now, this Sasol headline is interesting, Temple, selling 30% stake in the Mozambique gas pipeline. Of course, you will recall Total called for a force majeure for that prospect around Cabo Delgado province. They are now claiming from the Mozambique government significant further concessions. And it's highly unlikely that this whole project will start for another 12 months. And I think, therefore, we've got to look at this Sasol development in that context. Sasol have had balance sheet issues, but I think, you know, for those who can look through the near term, you know, the opportunity to take a 30% stake in that gas pipeline, I think, is probably a good one in the medium to long term. The other thing that will support South Africa is the gold price, which has been quietly rallying, and I expect it to rally to fresh all-time highs through the end of the year. And then, if I may just finish off with Eastern Platinum, of course, Platinum has been an outperformer. And then to say with copper, you were talking about DR Congo, don't forget cobalt as well, which is really the metal for this century, I think.
Thank you so much, Ali, for those comments there. Onyeka, quickly, your thoughts on the mining story, perhaps?
Thank you very much. I don't really have much thoughts on the mining story. We know that in terms of platinum and gold, the outlook for platinum and gold has been quite strong over the over the past year, basically, as we've seen a recovery in economic expectations across the world. The demand for metals has been rising, and we've definitely seen higher production from South Africa and some of the other major mining countries. But I think the more interesting thing is the Sasol story, where we've seen and again, I'll call this a right sizing of investments, because here we are basically seeing them take on a more appropriate capital structure for their size, basically looking to trim down debt, reduce their stake to 20%, while they still maintain operational control of the pipeline here. So they are they'll keep on receiving income from operating the pipeline while receiving profits from their investments without being heavily weighed down by the debt that came with it.
Thank you so much, Onyeka. Moving to the Northern African markets, Arab Valves posts net profit of 34.408 in terms of Egyptian pounds in the first quarter of this year. Arabian Cement incurs net loss of 6.3 million Egyptian pounds in the first quarter. Elsewhere-D Electric enters Asian markets with 2 acquisitions. Tunisia's budget deficit down by 44% to 177.8 million dinars in February 2021. That's this year. Bosin, your quick thoughts before we get the final words from Ali.
Well, yes, the Saudi company going into electric and going into Asian market with 2 acquisitions. You know, the Egyptians and the standing at that particular critical corner of the continent, and they becoming like an octopus, heading south, go to the Middle East, then they're going all the way to China, then they got the whole everywhere under their footprint. Look, if you strategically place such as Egypt, then you better play that strategic relationship or sort of position, and they're not letting anyone down, as far as I'm concerned. So I give it to them, and we need all the good efforts and the good decisions on a macroeconomic level, on a monetary policy level across the continent. The more good news that we have across the continent and spread it out around the world in a very good way across various sectors. My job as a journalist is to promote it and be happy with everyone who does it. So whether the Egyptians are doing it, or the Kenyans are doing it, or the South Africans are doing it, or they're doing it in Congo, DRC, or in Mauritania, or in Nigeria, or in Ghana, or in Senegal, Sierra Leone, all the way to Namibia, that is Frontier Africa. That is what we want to see. So these are some of the things that we're looking forward to see more good news coming out of the continent.
Thank you so much, Bosun. Ali, your final words.
Yes, I had to second what Bosun was describing, a wonderful description of it being an Egyptian octopus. I think he's absolutely right. I mean, it's very interesting what they're up to, and I think you should look into this more deeply. They're clearly seeking to be a conduit between the Mediterranean economies, the African economies. They're looking at this railway that they're building now to come all the way down to East Africa, and they're also looking towards Asia. It is a very sophisticated strategy, and really it's leaving every other country, as far as I can see, maybe except Morocco, for dust. And I wish they'd all go for coaching and go and speak to LCC and get on secondment there. They always love going to Dubai. Let them go to Cairo, they'll learn a lot more.
Thank you very much, Ali Kansachu. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presence on the show this morning. Ali Kansachu, founder Richmond Frontiers Management in Nairobi, Kenya. I appreciate your analysis. Onyeka Ijoma, thank you for joining us from Lagos. Bosun Omofaye, thank you for joining us as well from Lagos. This has been the show for today, and I'm Temple Ashaju. I'll see you next time.